Hello everyone, my name is Amanda Volts. I'm a personal finance teacher at St. Clair High School in St. Clair, Michigan, and I'm here again to offer a teacher tip video on an activity in the savings unit, which is comparing different types of savings accounts. So on the NGPF website, under curriculum and then under units, I'm in the savings unit, and the activity that I'm referencing is here under activities, and it is compare types of savings accounts. So this activity could be used kind of at the beginning of your banking unit when you're talking about different types of savings accounts, comparing different rates, the difference between a savings account, a CD, and a money market account. And what's great about this activity is it allows students to investigate the actual account types and rates at different banks. So I've used this a couple different ways actually in my classroom. One way that I've used it is exactly how it's written in the activity. So at the very beginning, you do some online research to look at traditional savings accounts versus online versus what a CD is versus what a money market account is. So one way to do this that I've done in the past is allow students just to go online, research the answers, type it or write it into the document, doing it on their own individually or in small groups. Another thing that I've done with this activity is I use this more like kind of a discussion notes format, where in the very beginning on these different types, we actually just sort of discussed and identified a lot of this together as a class. Because what I've noticed is students know what a savings account is. Many of them have them. And then when you start talking about online banks versus traditional or more commercial brick and mortar type buildings, the conversation develops a little bit. And then defining what a CD is at a bank and a money market account, I kind of liked the discussion part of it. So sometimes I'll let them go on their own, just as it's written, where they do some online research and fill it out. Or sometimes I will do it where we do this part of it as a class. The second piece of this assignment is where they then choose a bank or a credit union and they investigate some of the accounts that that bank has. So one of the suggestions or teacher tips I guess I would give for this second part is I've been more successful when I actually assign a student a bank. So instead of telling them, pick any bank that you want, they tend to navigate towards the same types, like the bank account that they currently have, not really opening their mind to different types of, exclusively online banks or credit unions that are in your area or your school's area. So I've been a little more successful in assigning them one, and then that way in the classroom you have multiple different banks and information that you can then compare. So again, I said I've used this kind of in different ways. I should tell you that my class is traditionally 12th graders, so I have mostly 12th graders that are taking my course, and my classes are about 55 minutes in length. So this assignment usually takes about one good class period, if not a little bit into the next class period with some kind of reflection, discussion, etc. So again, my suggestion would be to assign a bank instead of letting them pick, so you don't have 10 fifth thirds in the room and can kind of develop some discussion if you want it to be that type of activity. Another thing that I've done that I actually really like is I joined this activity, the savings accounts, with another activity in the units on the NGPF website. They have a similar activity that compares checking accounts. So what I've done this past time, actually I think I've done it one or two times now, is I merged the checking and the savings together, so they're simply just researching banks. So those students that are looking for a bank got a bunch of information on these different types and the services and the accounts they offer. Or if some of these students are moving away to college and looking maybe to change their bank, they have a lot of information available to them in a short amount of time. So in the checking unit, this is a different type of activity, there is compare selecting a checking account. So it's a kind of similar where you're comparing savings accounts under the savings unit, and then in the checking, you're doing checking accounts. So what I did is I've merged the two together. And I developed a spreadsheet that looks sort of like this. So I've taken banks that are within our area. I'm in the state of Michigan. So I took banks in popular college towns. And then I also added some banks that are credit unions, I should say, and also some that are exclusively online banks. And what I would do, or what I've done in the past, is I've assigned each student a bank, and then they do some research on their own, and we share the information in this collaborative spreadsheet. So it allows them to look at savings accounts in CDs, in money market accounts, but it also has them look a bit at checking accounts and if there's mobile banking available and things like overdraft protection, etc. And then we all collaborate on this same spreadsheet. So every student is filling out their particular column. And then those students that are searching for banks have about, depending on how many you have in your class, but 30 different bank information all in one spreadsheet. So I have a bit.ly link right here on your screen if you want to pause the video for a moment. This bit.ly link will take you to a copy of the spreadsheet that I created. If you want to use it, if you want to copy it, steal it, etc. I've developed this from the two NGPF activities where it's comparing the savings and kind of adding the checking component into it as well. So again, coming back to the activity, because I've done that, what I just showed you with we collaborate together, but I've also done it where they just answer these questions just on the savings, but again, finding success in assigning different banks rather than letting them choose. So then we can compare, okay, well, what's the interest rate at this bank versus that bank? And we just have some more diverse information. The last part of the activity is just some scenarios looking at building up an emergency fund versus more long-term growth versus some short-term and long-term savings and what type of accounts that they would recommend. So these reflection questions can be done really with any way that you want to use the activity. So this is a pretty straightforward activity, but it's a good one because it allows them to dig into real banks, particularly if you assign some that are in your area, and comparing and contrasting the fee structures, the interest rates, and all the characteristics that those accounts have.